Welcome back, life science learners. In this segment, we're going to wrap up nutrition. As I mentioned earlier on, we need to look at the dentition of these individuals. I do have these models here, but I've also been able to illustrate those images on the board. So let's look at how these different individuals have adapted their mode of nutrition based on their jaw structure. Right, so let's look at the adaptations of herbivores. Herbivores generally use their incisors to cut the plant material and often only found in the lower jaw. So if you look at this jaw, you can see well-developed incisors indicated in blue, and unfortunately, the upper jaw do not have any incisors. They usually lack canines, and if they are present, they're significantly small or they're deeply embedded into the root. They use their molars and premolars to grind their food extensively. So you can see well-developed molars and premolars. Let's look at this lower jaw of a cow. You can clearly see significantly reduced canines. The incisors in this model has actually fallen off, but you can see the well-developed molars and premolars, which are shaped in a way to allow for extensive grinding of their plant diet. Let's look at the dental formula of a sheep. So you notice that again the upper jaw is indicated here, and you've got the lower jaw in the bottom. So if we look at the dental formula, again the indication of, again we're starting from the middle, so the incisors would be 0, so there are no incisors on the upper jaw. There are no canines, but it has 3 molars and 3 premolars. Okay, when we look at the lower jaw, guys, we can see 4 well-developed incisors, no canines, 3 molars, and 3 premolars, or the other way around. So again, as you would note, that large gap indicating the absence. However, the jaw is also elongated, indicating the development of your premolars and molars. So that essentially points to the structural adaptation for its mode of nutrition. Why would they need extensive molars and premolars? That's for the grinding. The absence of the canines, again, these are individuals that are not predators. So they use their incisors to bite off and the molars and premolars to chew their food. Right. It's important that the dental formula of sheep is unpacked as follows. I did that earlier on. We must take note that there is a horny pad on the upper jaw. And often if you open the upper jaw of a herbivore, you'll find that it's got a flat, bony pad. And that again allows for the incisors to hold on to so that the pulling of that grass or plant material can happen. So there's a large gap or a diastema between the incisors and the premolars. So guys, if you talk about this large space, or this, when we look at the space between the teeth in the upper jaw of a gorilla, that space between the teeth is called the diastema. And often the diastema forms a mechanism to allow for the upper jaw and lower jaws to interlock. So again, you notice that the presence of the diastema, or space between the teeth, allow for the interlocking jaws to hold onto their prey or food so that biting and chewing can happen. Right, now let's unpack the structural adaptations of a jaw of a carnivore. As I mentioned, with us today, we've got the lion as well as we've got the gorilla jaws that we're going to look at. And I'm going to reference these as we get into this. So they have distinctly pointed incisors to slice and to shred their meat. So if you look at the incisors, chisel-shaped, pointed. And this again is important in biting off their meat. And we see these incisors quite pointed and sharp, kind of chisel-shaped. They have large and well-developed canines that are used for catching, holding, and tearing the meat. As you look at this, you can see the well-developed canines, and I'll illustrate that here. Large, pointed, and elongated teeth. Again, it's crucial that a predator is able to grab onto its prey, pierce the canines. The space between them allows for the upper jaw and the lower jaw to interlock, and that's the significance of the space between the teeth. And that then allows them to rip the meat. So the sharp molars and premolars are modified to form the carinacial teeth. As I mentioned earlier on, you can see that triangular shaped structure on these teeth that allow for the interlocking between the upper teeth and the lower teeth, between the molars and premolars. You can see they're triangular shaped, and that allows for the prey or the meat to be caught between and crushed. And so it's a well-structured jawline to allow for effective accessing of the nutrients from their food. Let's look at the dental formula. Again, we start with the upper jaw, and we're moving from the middle to the back, and that's of the lower jaw, essentially moving from the middle to the back. Just to give you context, again, it's that half on the upper jaw, and it's that half on the lower jaw. So we've got 3 incisors, large developed canine, 4 molars, premolars, and 3 molars. And so if you look at that, you can clearly see the developed canine there. You can see your 4 molars, premolars, and your 3 molars there. And so if we look at that, you can clearly see how these jaws are specifically well adapted for being able to bite, tear, and then using their premolars and molars to crush bone and meat into more soluble particles. Right, so the distinctive feature of the carnivore is its carinacial teeth, which I mentioned earlier on. The upper 4th molar and the lower 1st molars have sharp knife-like edges, which I pointed out earlier on. So they're quite pointed and knife-like edges. And these slide past each other, slicing the meat through flesh just as a pair of sharp scissors would do. And so they're basically there to cut through the meat and to cut that up into smaller bits as it's swallowed. Right, carnivores are predators, and they expend a lot of energy in hunting, and hence in order for them to be able to access food, they must be able to feed off larger prey. Meat is low in carbohydrates but rich in other nutrients such as amino acids and protein, and that is essentially important for the energy requirements. Meat is easier to digest than plant material, and you'll find that carnivores have a much shorter digestive system compared to carnivores, which have an elongated digestive system for a much longer process for digesting plant material and accessing the nutrients. We know that the size of the open jaw is fairly large. So if we were to compare how the jaw of a predator opens up, so they have the ability to be able to extend their jaw much larger, and that allows for them to be able to grab and grip onto their prey. And this ability allows for greater size of prey to be consumed. Okay. However, if we look at that compared to a herbivore, and I've got, as I mentioned here, I've got a little rabbit, and its jaw size does not necessarily open significantly wider. We also know that cows do not open their jaw wide, and if you think of a horse, it doesn't stretch open its mouth wide, and so that's quite a significant difference. So we talk about the teeth are modified for grasping, tearing, and chewing through meat. We also know that the canines are long and sharp. They're used for killing of the prey and tearing their meat. Right, let's move on to the omnivores. And guys, the best example of omnivores are us humans. And so I've got a human skull here, which shows you a jawline that shows quite uniform teeth. And let's try and unpack that. So, omnivores have a digestive system that consumes both plant material and animal material. So, the ability to be able to consume plant and animal matter means that we've got to have teeth that allow us to be able to grind the plant material, bite off the plant material, but also grind and chew some of the protein that we get from animal matter. So, an example of the emperor tamarin, which is a type of primate, has the following dental formula. It has 2 incisors, 1 canine, 3 premolars, and 2 molars. And essentially, we find that it has a similar arrangement on the lower jaw. Humans also have a similar arrangement. Again, that is an adaptation for being able to bite and chew and grind their food quite well. Other monkeys and humans have the following dental formula. So we've got 2 incisors, 1 canine, 2 premolars, and 3 molars. Again, an adaptation to an omnivorous diet. Okay? We can compare that to many of the other primates, and you can clearly see the distinct formation of your canines, your incisors, and your molars and your premolars. Again, an adaptation to a diet of plant and animal matter. Finally, guys, as we wrap this up, it's important that we compare the jaw structure, not just in terms of the teeth, but also in terms of the length of the jaw. We notice that herbivores generally have an elongated jaw. We also mentioned that in terms of the ability to open their jaws, in terms of the width, it's significantly smaller. On the other extreme, we've got carnivores that have a shorter, lower jaw line, distinct, what I refer to as zygomatic arches, which are there for the adaptation and attachment of strong muscles to allow for the jaw to open wider and to grab and hold. We notice that the jawline is much reduced and shorter in comparison to a herbivore, with larger canines distinctly present to be able to grab on. And right in the middle, we compare that to the omnivore, which has a blend between the two. So it's got generally well-developed incisors, subtle canines, which you see there. We don't use our canines significantly as other predators would use them. And we've got well-developed molars and premolars for chewing our food. So guys, as we wrap this segment up, it's important that you are able to access questions and where you're comparing the jaw structure. Note the key to be able to identify the type of habit, the type of feeding is by looking at the canines. We also spend a lot of time looking at the structure of teeth in terms of unpacking the mode of nutrition of some of our fossils that have been found. And so the dental formula and the arrangement of teeth often give us a lot of information around the feeding of some of the prehistoric individuals or fossils that we found. So jaw structure is important in terms of understanding the nutrition. So guys, I hope that you've enjoyed the engagement. Trust that you go back, reflect on what we've done, and then use this information to be able to access and answer some revision questions. Guys, from my side, trust that you've had a good day. Take care. See you soon. Have a bio-lekker day.